In the next 3 to 5 years, I think the biggest changes that people will see in Shireland is we'll be able to sustain our outreach work in a way that we haven't been able to do before. Quite simply, we want to put our Learning Gateway in the hands of the children wherever they are, let them go home and access the Learning Gateway and do learning units, and mail each other, take part in things, do it in the classroom where we want them to go out onto the playground. One of my staff came to me this morning and said, "Did you see me out on the grass?" Strange question. I said, "No." She said, "Well, I took my maths group out, we sat on the grass and we did our maths on the grass because it's a nice day." And it was only then that I thought, well, actually, I can remember when we used to do that. People would just do that. Why don't we do things like that? And actually, we don't do things like that because you can't enable the way that we work. Now, if I could give all of my students in particular year groups mobile devices, I'm not saying I want them all to sit on the grass. The weather in England's not good enough for them to sit on the grass, but it would be really good for them to be able to gather where there's a sensible place for them to be. And if that's sometimes for them to work in corridors, if it's for them to be sitting out on the grass, if it's to be they're in the playground or they're at a visit, and they can use the technology when they want to use it and we want them to use it, and they're not bound by the technology's barriers, that's what I think we'll see.
Social networking has huge possibilities for us in terms of collaborative learning. And we've got to channel that very carefully because of all the sensitivities over security, but actually all the possibilities that can come out of learning together and young people learning from each other. There are areas that we're working on at the moment, such as the development of Performance Point, which will mean that our MIS can link even better than it does at the moment to the information that's in the Learning Gateway, because what we would like to see happening is teachers and other staff who are working with young people being able to use real-time information to influence the way in which they personalise the programmes for those students, the way in which they shape the curriculum for those students, and crucially for students also and their families to have access to that information and to understand better what we're trying to do.
We're focusing on attendance and punctuality, on rewards and sanctions. So we've got a whole group of staff together and said, if you could have data represented and presented to people, what would you present? For a lot of our staff, what they actually want to know is where things are going well and where things aren't going well. So the request from the staff was, could we look at the different subjects to see where there's poor behaviour? One of the bits that we're looking to do is to actually represent where there are incidences of poor behaviour on a map of our academy. So actually you can see whether there are hot spots of poor behaviour. We know there are. But actually, we're not very scientific quite often when we look at areas like that. With the softer aspects like punctuality and behaviour and rewards, everybody always has an opinion. Oh, in science, the behaviour is not very good. And actually, when you go and look at the data, quite often you find that people are wrong. They just happen to walk down a corridor one day when a child's had a bad day or a teacher's had a bad day. So what we are doing with Performance Point is actually present data, the real data, not people's supposition as to what's happening. Our school will change dramatically. Some of the walls that we insist on putting around kids to give them security, they simply don't need. We actually need it. Teachers need it sometimes, school leaders need it, the kids don't need it. The kids live in a free-form society. Why is it that our children can use 5 technologies at 7 o'clock when they're at home and they can't use any when they come into our schools? We put these artificial barriers. So the next few years we're going to see a very different way of working. We're going to see very different schools. And if we don't, the whole Building Schools for the Future programme in this country will have lost a massive opportunity. If we end up with schools that look like the Victorian schools that we're demolishing, then I don't think we'll ever get that opportunity again. I think we'll do the children a great disservice.